Have you ever wondered why a normal night's sleep in a freezing cabin in the Wild West could turn into a real battle for survival? Pioneers and trappers on the frontier didn't just lie down to rest. They entered into a complex game with nature, where the price of a mistake was unbearable cold. In this video, we will immerse ourselves in the lives of people for whom 8 hours of rest were a time of extreme concentration and constant awakenings. We will learn how they arranged their night's rest in extreme temperatures and why fire was both their best friend and their worst enemy. Watch the video to the end, and you will learn the true price of survival in the winter forest and the secret method that allowed them to keep their huts warm until morning. What if I told you that everything you believed about cozy winter evenings in cabins was actually a harsh ordeal? For a person on the frontier, preparing for bed began long before the sun disappeared below the horizon. Walls made of rough-hewn logs coated with a mixture of clay and straw offered little protection from the piercing winds of the Rocky Mountains. Every crack in the wall turned into an icy blade, capable of cooling the entire room in a matter of minutes. Settlers had to make sure that their supply of firewood was within arm's reach, because going outside at night in a blizzard could end tragically. The real art was in turning the small space around the hearth into a zone of relative comfort. At the center of this lifestyle was always a stove or an open fireplace made of river stones. This hearth was the heart of the home, its only source of energy and life during the cold season. The heat from the stones was distributed unevenly, creating areas of sharp temperature differences right inside the room. It could be unbearably hot near the fire, while a few feet away, water in a jug would be covered with a crust of ice. Pioneers knew that they could not rely on the stove alone and used all available materials for additional insulation. Woven rugs, animal skins, and even old newspapers were used to trap the escaping warm air. The uniqueness of this process lay in the creation of a so-called nest for sleeping, which was built on the principle of multi-layering. People did not simply cover themselves with a blanket, they created a complex structure of straw mattresses and heavy woolen capes. Often, the bed was placed on a raised platform so that the cold air flowing across the floor would not disturb the sleeper. In some cases, special canopies were used to keep the warmth of breath inside a small space. Such domestic engineering allowed people to maintain their body temperature even in the most severe frosts. We would be very interested to hear your opinion on such living conditions. Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on new exciting stories about life on the frontier. Are you ready to learn the truth about how there was practically no such thing as a good night's sleep in the Wild West in winter? 8 hours of rest in a frozen hut were divided into short periods of time spent constantly tending the fire. As soon as the flames began to die down, the temperature inside the room dropped rapidly, causing the body's natural reaction to the cold. People would wake up shivering and needing to throw a new batch of fuel into the stove. This cycle repeated every 2 or 3 hours, turning the night into an endless series of short dreams. No one could afford the luxury of sleeping until dawn, as that meant waking up in a completely frozen house. Throwing wood on the fire required special skill and knowledge of the properties of different types of wood. Trappers preferred to use hardwood such as oak or hickory, which burned for a long time and produced a lot of coals. Coniferous trees burned quickly, giving off bright light and instant heat, but they also burned out quickly, leaving only ashes behind. It was necessary to skillfully combine different logs to ensure stable burning for several hours. An experienced settler could tell by the sound of the crackling flames whether it was time to get up or sleep a little longer. Every movement in the dark was honed to perfection so as not to waste precious minutes of wakefulness. The fear of fire always went hand in hand with the need for warmth, creating constant psychological tension. Sparks flying out of an open hearth could easily ignite straw on the floor or dry clothes hanging nearby. Nighttime awakenings served not only to keep warm, but also to check the safety of the dwelling. The sleeper had to remain alert at all times, ready to react to the smell of smoke or an unusual crackling sound. This state of semi-sleep, semi-wakefulness became a way of life during the long winter months. Do you think modern people could withstand such a sleep schedule for 6 months? I discovered this by accident while studying old hunters' diaries, but the secret to their survival lay in the proper use of furs. Unlike modern synthetic materials, animal skins had unique thermoregulatory properties. Trappers used bison or bear fur as a bottom layer for their beds, which served as the perfect insulator from the ground. On top, they covered themselves with heavy sheep wool blankets that could absorb moisture without losing their thermal properties. This sandwich of natural materials created a microclimate that could withstand even Arctic winds. The correct layering of these materials was a real art, passed down from generation to generation. Particular attention was paid to protecting the extremities, as the feet were the first to freeze. People often slept in moccasins stuffed with dry grass or rabbit fur for extra warmth. Hands were hidden under the armpits or deep under the blanket, trying to minimize contact with the cold air. The head was always covered with a woolen cap or fur hat, as most of the heat escapes through it. All this made a person look like a cocoon, completely protected from the outside environment. Such equipment allowed them to survive even when the fire in the stove was completely extinguished. Interestingly, pioneers often used heated stones wrapped in cloth, which they placed at their feet before going to sleep. This simple trick allowed them to warm their beds and maintain a comfortable temperature during the first hours of rest. The stones slowly gave off heat, acting like a modern hot water bottle, but with much greater efficiency. Sometimes, instead of stones, they used hot water bottles if available, or even small cast iron pans. These little tricks turned an icy bed into an oasis of warmth. Like this if you think such resourcefulness deserves respect. Guess how long it took for people to realize the full severity of winter isolation on the frontier? Long nights in the cabin were a test not only for the body, but also for the human psyche. The silence of the winter forest, broken only by the howling wind and the crackling of freezing trees, could lead to despair. At such moments, the fire became not just a source of heat, but the only companion and symbol of civilization. Man felt like a grain of sand in a vast ocean of ice, cut off from the rest of the world for weeks on end. This feeling of absolute loneliness shaped the unique character of the settlers of the Wild West. Nighttime fears were intensified by the realization of complete helplessness in the event of a serious breakdown of the hearth or illness. If the firewood ran out ahead of time, the chances of surviving until dawn rapidly melted away along with the dying embers. Every time they woke up at night, they checked not only the heat, but also their own mental state. People often talked to themselves or read aloud from the few books they had, just to hear a human voice. The light from the flames cast bizarre shadows on the walls, which sometimes seemed frightening and alive. Psychological resilience was as important as physical endurance. The social structure of the frontier meant that families or groups of trappers shared this space together, which made life much easier. In family huts, duty at the stove was divided among the adult members of the family, allowing everyone to get at least a few hours of deep sleep. However, many hunters preferred solitude, and for them, every night was a personal challenge. Collective survival was based on trust and the precise fulfillment of one's duties in the dark. Winter did not forgive carelessness or laziness, quickly weeding out those who were not ready to fight. What do you think was more difficult, fighting the cold or the overwhelming loneliness? Building a house in the Wild West was a process where architecture was directly dependent on climatic conditions. Cabins were usually small in size to make them easier to heat with the resources available. Low ceilings helped keep warm air in the lower part of the room where people were. Windows were small and often covered with heavy shutters or oiled paper, as glass was a rare and expensive commodity. Every element of the structure was designed to minimize heat loss and protect against the biting winds of the prairies. The floor was often made of tightly packed earth, which was covered with a layer of straw for insulation. The logs for the walls were chosen with great care, with preference given to coniferous species because of their resinousness. The joints between the logs were filled with moss, wood chips, and clay, creating a watertight structure. Over time, the wood shrunk, and the settlers had to renew this sealant every year before the onset of cold weather. The roof was covered with a thick layer of bark or turf, which served as an excellent natural insulator. During heavy snowfalls, the snowdrifts that accumulated on the roof created an additional protective layer that retained the internal heat. Nature itself helped those who knew its laws and knew how to use them. The location of the hut also played a key role in its thermal efficiency throughout the winter. Experienced builders tried to place the house under the protection of a hill or dense forest to shield it from prevailing winds. The door was always oriented to the leeward side to avoid the formation of huge snowdrifts directly in front of the entrance. Inside, the space was organized around the hearth, which was often located in the very center or at the end wall. The kitchen area and sleeping quarters were located in close proximity to the heat source. Thus, all life in the winter was concentrated in a few square meters. What you are about to see may seem unusual to modern people, but it was a harsh reality. In a frozen hut, any water procedures became a complex process requiring a huge amount of firewood. Snow had to be melted in large cauldrons to obtain at least a few liters of water for basic needs. People often went weeks without a proper wash, which was a necessary measure to conserve heat and energy. Clothes were not changed for a long time, as it was almost impossible to dry them inside a damp hut. Life on the frontier in winter was as simple and harsh as possible. Laundry was postponed until the first thaws, when it was possible to build a large fire outside without the risk of freezing. Inside the house, the humidity from drying clothes could lead to frost on the walls and general discomfort. Settlers used dry cleaning and airing furs in the cold to get rid of odors and parasites. The cold itself served as a kind of antiseptic, slowing down many negative processes. Nevertheless, maintaining cleanliness required iron discipline and constant effort from people. This was the invisible side of the struggle for a decent life in the wild. Cooking in winter also had its own peculiarities and limitations, dictated by the lack of fresh produce. The diet consisted mainly of dried meat, beans, and flour products, which could be stored for a long time. Cooking took place directly in the hearth, which allowed heating the room and preparing dinner at the same time. The smells of food mixed with the aroma of burning wood and skins, creating the unique atmosphere of a winter hut. Kitchen utensils were simple and sturdy, able to withstand direct contact with open flames. How did the settlers cope with the lack of vitamins during such long winter months? In addition to the cold and open fire, there was another deadly threat that experienced frontier dwellers were aware of. Poor ventilation combined with tightly sealed cracks could lead to the accumulation of combustion products inside the hut. Carbon monoxide was odorless and colorless, making it extremely dangerous for sleeping people. Waking up at night was also important to check the draft in the chimney and make sure the air was fresh. People instinctively sensed danger when the flames began to burn dimly or when unexplained drowsiness set in. Proper chimney construction was a matter of life and death for the entire family. Chimneys often became clogged with soot or snow during heavy blizzards, causing smoke to back up into the room. Every morning began with checking the cleanliness of the pipe and removing excess ash from the ash pit. If the hut was covered with snow up to the roof, ventilation became a critical task. Settlers had to dig tunnels in the snowdrifts to ensure oxygen flow to the hearth. This daily routine required physical strength and constant attention to detail. The safety of the home depended on the vigilance of its owner at all hours of the day. Trappers in forest camps often used temporary shelters, where the risk of smoke poisoning was even higher. They built small sheds or dugouts where the hearth was in close proximity to the sleeping area. The ability to build a fire so that the smoke rose upward without filling the space was considered the highest skill. Many newcomers to the frontier made mistakes in this aspect of survival, underestimating the power of combustion products. The history of the conquest of the West is full of cases where entire groups of people died because of improperly organized heating. Knowledge of the physics of combustion was a prerequisite for those who wanted to return home. Winter days in the northern frontier were short, and most of active life took place under artificial light. Animal fat candles gave off a dim and smoky light, but were the only option available to most people. Candle making was a laborious process that was usually carried out in the autumn months. The fat was melted, purified, and repeatedly poured into molds with cotton or hemp wicks. Every candle was counted, and they were used only when absolutely necessary. The main source of light in the hut remained the flame in the fireplace or stove. The fire created a dynamic play of light and shadow in the room, to which people quickly became accustomed. By this light, they repaired clothing, cleaned weapons, and planned the next days of exploring the territory. The glare of the flames was reflected in copper dishes and on the blades of tools, creating comfort in a harsh environment. The light of the fire was not only functional, but also a psychological factor that drove away the darkness of the wild. For people of that time, light was synonymous with safety and control over space. The evening hours by the fire were a time for reflection and sharing stories. Some used oil lamps if they could get hold of whale oil or vegetable oil. Such lamps provided a more stable light, but required regular maintenance of the wick and cleaning of the glass. Having a lamp in the house was considered a sign of wealth and a certain social status for the owner. However, most settlers relied on the simplest torches, thin splinters of resinous wood. The splint was inserted into a special clamp and burned brightly, but not for very long, requiring constant replacement. Everyday life was adjusted to the rhythms of the light going out and coming back on. Despite the harsh conditions, winter was a time for strengthening social ties between neighbors, if they lived within reach. The cold and isolation made people especially appreciate any human contact. Even a short meeting could be of great importance. During these months, loneliness was felt particularly acutely. Rare visits to each other turned into real events that were prepared for in advance. People brought simple treats and small gifts with them. Exchanging news helped them feel connected to the outside world. Such visits were remembered for a long time. During these meetings, people shared their survival experiences. They talked about new ways to insulate their homes and conserve heat. They shared successful hunting techniques in the snow. This knowledge could save lives in the coming weeks. Such meetings helped to combat depression and feelings of complete isolation from civilization. Laughter, conversation, and evenings spent together around the fire restored a sense of normal life. People understood that they were not alone. This gave them the strength to survive the most difficult periods. Mutual assistance was not just a moral principle, but a well-thought-out survival strategy. One person could not withstand the elements as effectively as a group of neighbors. Helping others in trouble was considered a natural duty. Today you help someone else, tomorrow they will help you. Women played a key role in organizing winter life and maintaining the morale of the family. It was up to them to ensure that the house was ready for the cold weather. They planned the use of supplies and kept everything in order. Their work often went unnoticed, but it was vital. They were responsible for food supplies, processing skins, and making warm clothes for all the household members. The work continued day and night. Every mistake could be costly. Warm clothing was as important a resource as food. They managed to create comfort even in the most primitive structures. Simple embroidery or homemade decorations brought the house to life. Such details kept the family's spirits up. The interior of the hut became an island of calm. The interior of the house was the domain of women, where order and warmth were maintained. This is where decisions were made about how to survive the winter without losses. Men were responsible for the external security of the home. They monitored the surrounding environment and threats. Men gathered firewood, hunted large animals, and protected the family. Their work was dangerous and exhausting. Without prey and fuel, the house quickly became useless. This division of roles was most effective in extreme conditions. Children in such families were taught responsibility from an early age. They understood that the cold did not forgive mistakes. Children helped with small household chores and kept an eye on the fire. Even when playing, they learned to be careful. They learned early on to recognize the signs of frostbite and fatigue. Upbringing on the frontier was harsh but fair. It shaped skills of independence and endurance. Each generation passed on to the next the secrets of dealing with fire, forest, and cold. Winter became the best teacher, testing the character of every member of the community. It made no concessions to adults or children. Only hard work, discipline, and mutual support allowed them to survive. This is how the legendary resilience of American pioneers was forged, becoming part of the national identity. The end of an 8-hour sleep cycle in a frozen hut was only a small victory in the long winter war. With each passing day, as the sun lingered in the sky a little longer, hope for the coming warmth grew stronger. The first signs of spring, the sound of dripping water or the appearance of thawing snow, were perceived as the greatest blessing. People began to prepare to emerge from their snowy captivity, checking the condition of their seeds and tools. The trials of winter receded, leaving behind experience and hardened characters. Those who survived that night knew that new challenges awaited them in the vast expanses ahead. The process of thawing the hut required caution, as excess moisture could damage the wooden structures. The settlers opened the doors and windows, letting in the fresh spring air and allowing the walls to dry under the first rays of the sun. It was a time for spring cleaning and getting rid of the trash and old straw that had accumulated over the winter. The energy of renewal filled everyone who had managed to survive the long months of cold and darkness. Life on the frontier picked up speed again, returning to the usual fieldwork and construction. Each spring was a symbol of the victory of the human spirit over the silent desert. The story of 8 hours of sleep in a frozen hut is a hymn to human ingenuity and the will to live. We see that behind simple actions lay the deep knowledge and constant vigilance of the pioneers. Their experience reminds us of the importance of appreciating the basic comforts we take for granted today. The Wild West was a place where every breath and every movement mattered for survival. This era has left us with examples of incredible courage and the ability to find a way out of the most hopeless situations. We hope that this immersion into a frosty night in the Wild West has helped you take a fresh look at the history of frontier exploration. The daily life of the pioneers consisted of thousands of little things, each of which was aimed at preserving warmth and life. 8 hours of sleep was not just rest, but a complex technical process of maintaining fire and safety. If you are interested in such detailed analyses of historical life, write in the comments what other aspects of the pioneers' lives you would like to learn about. Subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and see you in new episodes about the secrets and truths of the American frontier.